In this video, I want to talk about production for full print wraps. And production for me is really the key ingredient to making a smooth transition from the design to the install. Now again, for me, the three big wheels for full print wraps is design, production, and then install. So for me, you have a good design, they give it to the production department. And for me, this is where a lot of problems can be either avoided or you run into a lot of issues, okay? So for me, what I think first and foremost, especially when you're wrapping, let's say, sedans or vans and stuff like that, is to print horizontal. I think that really helps the production department, because basically if you present it horizontal, which is how we wrap the driver's side of this vehicle, is that basically you print, laminate it, throw it in a box. The installer just cuts it up on the job because there's no need to go back and trim the panels. If you print vertically, which is what I think a lot of people do, if you print vertically, then that means you have to trim panels, then put them in the box, put them in sequential order, and it just takes more production time. So one of those things where if you're trying to save a little money on jobs is to do horizontal. Even if you do vertical though, you can get clever, and this is what I want to show when we wrap the passenger side of the car today, is make your overlaps larger and try to make your overlaps fall on the body line. So in this case, on the car, the overlaps are going to fall in between the doors and the back and the front fenders. So that means that you can actually push the panel, cut it off on one side, put the other panel, cut it off on the other side. So then you basically have a seamless car, and then you don't have to trim the panel. So that's a really good tip. So that just gets into how you set up the panels on the vehicle, and that really comes down to the production department, because the production department gets the file from the designer, then they break it up. So again, if you're smart in production, that can help streamline, because then you can avoid trimming. Again, saves time, because it's all about time and money with full print wraps. Then you get into how you should roll the panels. As an installer, I always expect to get a printed layout. Ideally, you should draw the panels on the vehicle so I can kind of know that this is driver's side. I'm going to get one panel here. Also, what you want to do is roll the panels up in sequential order. Let's say hood, driver's side, whatever panels you need for each section. So as an installer, I can pull out each section, however many panels there are for that section, and I know that I have a complete set. Very important. And what also is very important is that either the designer or the production person, what they do is they label the panel in the print. That's really, really key, because if you're a production department, you're going to get busy, and if you're supposed to label the panels to say with a Sharpie or a wax pencil on the back, you're not going to do it, and that kind of really slows down the install. So for me as an installer, I love to have it in the print because it's just very straightforward. One thing I think is the two most important things though about production, which often can get skipped or just not understood, is using the right profile when printing, and then also choosing the right material. And this really gets into communication with the installer and also the owner of the company and stuff like that. So make sure you don't use the wrong material, but also make sure you use the right material for the vehicle. So for instance, on this sedan today, has mirrors, bumpers, door handles. Not going to use calendar film, but also you want to make sure you use the right lamination, even if you're using cast. Not all laminations for cast are super flexible. You kind of want to err on thin. So for example, this is Avery Dennison film. 1005 is the print film, but then you also want to use 1360, which is 1.3, as opposed to the 1060, which is 2.1. And every manufacturer, 3M, Arlon, Oracle, has this kind of formula where they have a standard lamination, which is around 4 millimeters thick, but they all carry a thinner lamination, which makes it better for cars, because thinner is better. But the most important thing, again, is choosing the right profile, and then depending on the ink used, letting it outgas. So what I ask the people who produce the graphics, Car App City today, is when they produce the graphics, they used the wrong profile, a general profile that came with a Muto printer, and they didn't use one specific for that type of film, and they didn't outgas. So again, there's 4 different types of material today. There's UV, solvent, eco-solvent, and latex. This was an eco-solvent printer. They basically printed, laminated it, and then gave it to me. And as you can tell in the video, especially when I'm like on the hood or the roof, I got a lot more bubbles, and it was a lot more aggressive than this film normally is. So as an installer, that tells me that the production department rushed it through and didn't let the material properly set. And that leads to massive problems down the line. So if you're an installer on this job and you feel like the material is particularly heavy or saturated or just feels kind of gooey, then you better call the production department, whoever produced the graphics, and ask them if they use the right profile, because then that comes into warranty issues where once the graphics are on the car, if it's not outgassed properly, or you didn't use the right profile and there's too much ink, that can affect the warranty. So if you have issues, let's say on a fleet, and it starts to peel, that can create problems down the line, because then you might not get your warranty back from the manufacturer because they say you didn't use the right profile or you didn't let it outgas. And that can be pretty obvious once you start taking the wrap off, and you can see if there's issues and stuff like that. So again, for production, for me, is try to be smart as far as like cutting the panels up, labeling them, boxing them, but again, use the right profile and then streamline it, and just good communication with the installer saying, hey, what do you want me, how do you want me to set up this job? Because if you could hand it off to him and have it go smooth, and then even if you don't have to trim panels, to say you go horizontal, that frees you up to do other things in your sign shop, but again, makes money and saves time. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Pate.